Sarah Martinez pressed her back against the concrete barrier as gunfire erupted across the courtyard. The sound of automatic weapons echoed through the abandoned hospital compound where she had been working as a field medic for the past 6 months. What was supposed to be a routine medical supply run had turned into a nightmare when insurgents attacked their convoy just outside the city. The young nurse from Texas had never imagined she would find herself in this situation when she joined the Military Medical Corps 2 years earlier. She had wanted to serve her country and help wounded soldiers, but nothing in her training had prepared her for actual combat. Her hands shook as she checked her medical kit, making sure everything was still secure after diving behind cover. "Martinez, you okay over there?" shouted Sergeant Collins, the team leader who had been escorting her supply convoy. He was crouched behind an overturned vehicle about 20 feet away, his rifle aimed toward the building where muzzle flashes kept appearing. "I'm fine," Sarah called back, though her voice betrayed her fear. She could hear bullets hitting the concrete near her head, sending small chips flying. 3 other soldiers from the escort team were spread out around the courtyard, all pinned down by enemy fire. They had been trying to reach the hospital entrance when the attack began. The mission had started like any other morning. Sarah had loaded her medical supplies into the convoy vehicle, double-checking her inventory of bandages, morphine, and surgical equipment. The hospital they were resupplying served both military personnel and local civilians in the region. It was dangerous work, but Sarah believed deeply in helping anyone who needed medical care, regardless of which side they fought for. As the convoy moved through the dusty streets, Sarah had reviewed the patient files she would be working with that day. There were several soldiers recovering from blast injuries, and a local woman who needed surgery after being caught in crossfire the week before. These were the people she thought about when the fear got too strong, the lives depending on her medical skills and dedication. The attack came without warning as they approached the hospital gates. Rocket-propelled grenades struck the lead vehicle, forcing everyone to abandon their transport and seek cover. Sarah had grabbed her medical kit instinctively, following her training to prioritize saving the wounded over her own safety. Now she found herself trapped with 4 soldiers in a firefight that showed no signs of ending. "We've got wounded," Collins reported over his radio to base command. "Need immediate extraction and close air support. Enemy strength unknown, but we're outnumbered and pinned down." The response was crackling and hard to understand, but Sarah could make out that help was at least 30 minutes away. She watched Collins grimace and press his hand to his shoulder. Even from her position, she could see blood seeping between his fingers. The sergeant had been hit, but he was still trying to coordinate their defense. 2 other soldiers were also showing signs of injury, though they continued returning fire at their attackers. Sarah knew she had to do something. These men were bleeding and needed medical attention that only she could provide. But reaching them meant crossing open ground while under enemy fire. Everything in her training told her to stay in cover and wait for backup, but her instincts as a medic demanded action. She studied the layout of the courtyard, calculating distances and looking for any route that might offer protection. There was a low wall that ran parallel to her position, extending about halfway to where Collins was taking cover. If she could reach it, she might be able to get close enough to treat the wounded soldiers. The enemy fire intensified suddenly, forcing everyone to duck lower behind their cover. Sarah could hear voices shouting in a foreign language from the building across the courtyard. The insurgents seemed to be coordinating something, possibly preparing for an assault on their positions. Time was running out. "Martinez, stay down," Collins ordered when he saw her preparing to move. "That's a direct order. We'll hold until backup arrives." But Sarah had already made her decision. She understood military hierarchy, but her oath as a medical professional superseded everything else. These men needed treatment now, not in 30 minutes when it might be too late. She adjusted her medical kit, took a deep breath, and prepared to run. The first thing that surprised everyone, including Sarah herself, was how naturally she moved under fire. Instead of the panic scrambling they all expected, She used a low combat crawl that kept her profile minimal while allowing rapid movement. She reached the low wall in seconds, having crossed 20 feet of open ground without being hit. Collins stared in amazement as the young nurse pressed herself against the wall, breathing hard but completely focused. "Where the hell did you learn to move like that?" he whispered when she got close enough. "I don't know," Sarah replied honestly. "It just felt right." She couldn't explain the instincts that had taken over, guiding her movements in ways her medical training never covered. Something inside her seemed to understand combat tactics and battlefield awareness that she had never formally learned. She assessed Collins' wound quickly, finding that the bullet had passed through his shoulder without hitting major arteries. "You'll live," she told him while applying pressure bandages, "but you need to keep that arm still." Her hands were steady now, the fear replaced by professional focus, and something else she couldn't identify. The next soldier was 15 feet away behind a concrete pillar. Private Johnson had taken shrapnel to his leg and was losing blood at a dangerous rate. Sarah studied the route between positions, noting the pattern of enemy fire and identifying a brief window when their attackers would need to reload. "Cover me," she told Collins, then sprinted across the open space during the momentary lull in gunfire. Her timing was perfect, reaching Johnson just as the shooting resumed. The private looked shocked to see her, but grateful as she immediately began working on his leg wound. "How are you doing this?" Johnson asked through gritted teeth as Sarah applied a tourniquet. "You're moving like you've been in combat for years." Sarah paused in her work, realizing that Johnson was right. She was performing battlefield medicine with a confidence and skill that went beyond her training. More than that, she seemed to anticipate the flow of the firefight, knowing instinctively when it was safe to move and when to take cover. These weren't abilities that could be learned in a classroom or medical simulation. As she stabilized Johnson's wound, Sarah became aware of something else unusual. She could hear conversations among the enemy fighters across the courtyard, and somehow she understood what they were saying. The language was Arabic, which she had never studied, yet the words made perfect sense to her. They were planning to flank the American position using a service tunnel that connected to the hospital basement. The realization should have terrified her, but instead Sarah felt a strange calm settle over her mind. She knew things that she shouldn't know, could do things that she had never learned. There was a part of her identity that she had never accessed before, awakened by the life-or-death pressure of combat. It felt both foreign and completely natural, like remembering a forgotten skill. "They're going to try to get behind us," she told Collins after crawling back to his position. "There's a tunnel system they're using. We need to reposition or we'll be surrounded." Collins looked at her with a mixture of confusion and respect. "How could you possibly know that?" Sarah couldn't answer because she didn't understand it herself. But she was certain of the information, just as she was certain of her newfound combat abilities. Something fundamental had changed inside her during this firefight, revealing capabilities that had been hidden even from herself. She was no longer just a nurse caught in a bad situation. She was becoming something else entirely. The enemy fire shifted suddenly, confirming Sarah's warning. Muzzle flashes appeared from new positions, indicating that some of the insurgents had indeed moved to flank them. Collins immediately began repositioning his men, but they were running out of cover and options. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. "Base, this is Eagle 6, Collins spoke into his radio. "We need immediate extraction. Enemy is maneuvering to surround our position. We have wounded, but are still combat effective." The response was not what they wanted to hear. Extraction was delayed due to other ongoing operations in the area. They would have to hold their position for at least another hour, possibly longer. With limited ammunition and wounded soldiers, their chances of survival were decreasing by the minute. Sarah looked around at the men, depending on her medical care, then toward the enemy positions where she somehow knew exactly how many fighters they faced and what weapons they carried. The knowledge came from nowhere, yet felt completely reliable. She understood the tactical situation better than soldiers with years of combat experience. Something was awakening inside her, something that went far beyond medical training or natural talent. She was accessing abilities and knowledge that seemed impossible, yet felt as natural as breathing. The question was whether she would be brave enough to trust these new instincts and use them to save her team. As another wave of enemy fire swept across their position, Sarah Martinez began to understand that her life was about to change forever. The quiet nurse from Texas was disappearing, replaced by someone with skills and knowledge that defied explanation. The real test was just beginning. Sarah's mind raced as she processed information that shouldn't have been available to her. She could visualize the entire compound layout, including rooms and corridors she had never seen. More disturbing was her awareness of each enemy fighter's position, their weapons, and even their intended movements. The knowledge came without explanation, as if downloaded directly into her consciousness. "Collins, I need your sidearm," she said quietly, extending her hand toward the sergeant. "Absolutely not," he replied firmly. "You're a medic, Martinez. Your job is to keep us alive, not join the fight." Sarah understood his reasoning, but she also knew something he didn't. The insurgents were preparing for a final assault that would overwhelm their small group within minutes. Traditional defensive tactics wouldn't be enough. They needed someone to take offensive action, and somehow she knew exactly what needed to be done. "Trust me," she said, meeting his eyes. "I know this doesn't make sense, but I can end this." Collins studied her face, noting the complete absence of fear that had marked her earlier behavior. The young nurse, who had been trembling behind cover 20 minutes ago, was gone, replaced by someone with the cold confidence of a seasoned warrior. Against his better judgment, he handed her his pistol. Sarah checked the weapon with movements that were smooth and automatic, despite never having received formal weapons training beyond basic military orientation. Her hands knew the pistol's weight and balance, understood its capabilities and limitations. She chambered around and checked the safety with practiced efficiency that amazed even herself. "There are 8 fighters in the main building," she told Collins. 3 more in the water tower to our left, and 2 moving through the tunnel system toward our rear position. The ones in the tunnel will emerge from that maintenance shed in approximately 4 minutes. Collins stared at her. "How can you possibly know that?" Sarah couldn't explain, so she didn't try. Instead, she pointed to a drainage pipe that ran along the base of the main building. "That pipe connects to the building's ventilation system. I can use it to get inside and neutralize the primary threat." "That's suicide," Collins protested. "Even if you could get there alive, you're talking about engaging 8 armed insurgents by yourself." But Sarah was already moving, using cover and concealment techniques that would have impressed veteran infantry soldiers. She crossed the courtyard in a series of rapid movements, timing each sprint to coincide with lulls in enemy fire. Her route took her through positions that offered maximum protection while maintaining forward progress toward her objective. The insurgents in the building noticed her movement, but couldn't get clear shots due to her expert use of available cover. Sarah seemed to anticipate their reactions, always staying one step ahead of their targeting attempts. She reached the drainage pipe without being hit, despite crossing more than 100 yards of contested ground. Inside the pipe, Sarah's enhanced awareness continued to feed her information. She could hear conversations above her, understand tactical discussions in multiple languages, and visualize the building's interior layout with perfect clarity. The knowledge was impossible, yet completely reliable. She moved through the ventilation system like someone who had studied the building's blueprints for months. She emerged into a storage room on the building's first floor, having traveled through ducts and maintenance spaces with unerring navigation. The room was empty, but she could hear movement in adjacent areas. According to her inexplicable knowledge, 3 insurgents were in the next room, 2 more on the floor above, and 3 positioned at windows overlooking the courtyard. Sarah moved to the room's door and listened carefully. The fighters were discussing their assault plan, unaware that she had penetrated their position. She understood every word, though she still couldn't explain how she had learned Arabic or why combat tactics seemed so natural to her. The mysteries were multiplying, but there was no time to analyze them. Her first engagement came when she opened the door and found herself face-to-face with an insurgent who was turning to check the storage room. His eyes widened in surprise at seeing an American soldier, especially a woman, inside their supposedly secure building. Sarah's response was instantaneous and precise. The pistol was in her hand and firing before the insurgent could raise his weapon. Her aim was perfect, the shot placing exactly where it needed to be for an immediate threat-stopping result. The fighter dropped silently, his weapon clattering to the floor. Sarah's movements remained fluid and controlled, showing no signs of the shock or hesitation expected from someone in their first combat engagement. The other two fighters in the room reacted to the gunshot, but Sarah was already moving to a new position. She used furniture and architectural features for cover, engaging each target with the same deadly precision. Her tactical movement was flawless, always maintaining advantage while denying her enemies clear shots. Within 30 seconds, 3 insurgents were down, and she remained uninjured. The fighters upstairs responded to the sounds of combat, moving toward the stairwell to investigate. Sarah anticipated their reaction, positioning herself to intercept them as they descended. She had somehow acquired perfect knowledge of the building's layout, allowing her to predict enemy movement patterns and choose optimal firing positions. The first insurgent down the stairs walked directly into her carefully planned ambush. Sarah's shot was again perfectly placed, immediately eliminating the threat. The second fighter tried to retreat back upstairs, but Sarah was already moving to cut off his escape route. Her tactical awareness seemed to operate on a level beyond normal human capability. She climbed the stairs with confidence that bordered on supernatural, knowing exactly where each remaining enemy fighter was positioned. The knowledge came without visual confirmation or radio intelligence. She simply understood the tactical situation with complete certainty. Her movements were economical and purposeful, wasting no time or energy on unnecessary actions. The remaining fighters at the windows never had a chance to react. Sarah approached from angles they couldn't observe, using shadows and architectural features to remain invisible until the moment of engagement. Each shot was precisely aimed and immediately effective. Her ammunition management was perfect, never wasting rounds or firing unnecessarily. Within 7 minutes of entering the building, Sarah had neutralized all 8 insurgents. She moved through the structure methodically, confirming that each threat was eliminated while gathering intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. Her tactical clearing procedures were textbook perfect, despite never having received formal training in urban combat operations. From the window positions, she could observe the remaining insurgents at the water tower and those emerging from the tunnel system. The tactical situation was now reversed. Instead of her team being surrounded, the remaining enemies found themselves caught between her elevated position and Colin's ground-based force. Sarah had single-handedly transformed a desperate defensive action into a winnable fight. She used the insurgents' own radio equipment to communicate with Collins, having somehow learned to operate the foreign communication system during her brief time in the building. Her voice was calm and professional as she provided tactical updates and coordinate fire support against the remaining targets. Collins, this is Martinez. Building is secure. I have visual on remaining hostiles and can provide overwatch for your advance. The sergeant's voice came back filled with amazement and confusion. Martinez, what the hell just happened? We heard gunfire, then everything went quiet. Target eliminated, Sarah replied simply. Moving to support your position against remaining hostiles. She established firing positions at multiple windows, creating crossfire zones that made it impossible for the remaining insurgents to maintain their attacks. Her marksmanship was extraordinary, placing shots with surgical precision at ranges that challenged the pistol's effective capability. Each round found its target, forcing the enemy fighters to abandon their positions and seek new cover. The insurgents at the water tower were completely exposed to her elevated position. Sarah engaged them methodically, her shots forcing them to abandon their strategic advantage. When they tried to retreat toward the tunnel entrance, Collins and his team were ready to intercept them. The coordination was seamless, as if Sarah and Collins had been working together for years. The final enemy fighters realized they were trapped and attempted to surrender, but Collins couldn't risk accepting their surrender while his position remained uncertain. Sarah provided precise intelligence about enemy locations and intentions, allowing the sergeant to make informed tactical decisions. The engagement ended with all threats neutralized and no friendly casualties beyond the initial wounds she had already treated. When Sarah emerged from the building, Collins and his team stared at her in complete bewilderment. The young nurse, who had been terrified and inexperienced an hour earlier, had just executed a perfect solo assault operation against overwhelming odds. Her performance exceeded anything they had witnessed from seasoned special operations personnel. "Who are you?" Collins asked quietly. "And don't tell me you're just a nurse from Texas." Sarah looked down at the pistol in her hands, suddenly aware of what she had accomplished. The enhanced awareness was beginning to fade, leaving her with fragmented memories of abilities and knowledge that seemed to belong to someone else. She could remember executing perfect tactical movements and understanding foreign languages, but couldn't explain how any of it was possible. "I honestly don't know," she replied, and it was the complete truth. The extraction helicopter arrived 20 minutes later, but the situation had completely changed from the desperate rescue initially requested. Instead of extracting wounded soldiers under enemy fire, they found a completely secure area with all threats neutralized. The pilot and crew were briefed on the tactical situation, but nobody could adequately explain how 4 soldiers and 1 medic had defeated a superior enemy force. During the flight back to base, Collins filed his after-action report with growing confusion. The official military documentation would record that Nurse Sarah Martinez had provided outstanding medical support during a combat engagement, but it wouldn't capture the impossible tactical performance he had witnessed. Some things were too unusual to put in official reports. Sarah sat quietly during the return flight, trying to understand what had happened to her. The abilities she had demonstrated were real. She had the results to prove it, but they seemed to come from nowhere. She felt like someone had temporarily given her access to skills and knowledge far beyond her training or experience. The question was whether those abilities would return when she needed them again. The debriefing session took place 3 days after the incident, in a secure conference room at the forward operating base. Sarah sat across from Major Williams, the battalion intelligence officer, while Collins and 2 other personnel observers took notes. The official version of events had already been filed, but the major wanted to understand what really happened during those crucial 13 minutes. "Nurse Martinez, I need you to walk me through your actions once you left the cover position," Major Williams began. "Take your time and be as detailed as possible." Sarah had spent the past 3 days trying to remember exactly what she had done, but the memories felt strange and disconnected. She could recall specific actions and decisions, but the reasoning behind them remained unclear. It was like trying to remember someone else's dream. The images were there, but the context felt foreign. "I knew the building's layout," she started, then paused. I understood where the rooms were and how to navigate through them, but I had never been inside that building before." Major Williams exchanged glances with Collins. "How did you acquire this knowledge?" "I don't know, sir. The information was just there when I needed it. Like remembering something I'd learned a long time ago, except I knew I had never learned it." The major made notes on his tablet, while Sarah continued describing her actions. Her account was precise and tactical, using military terminology that went beyond her medical training. She spoke about fields of fire, tactical movement, and threat assessment with the confidence of an experienced combat soldier. "You mentioned understanding enemy communications," Williams said. "Are you telling me you speak Arabic?" No, sir, I don't speak Arabic. But during the engagement, I understood what they were saying. Not just individual words, complete tactical discussions about their plans and positions. Collins leaned forward. Sir, I've been in combat for 8 years, and I've never seen anything like what Martinez did. She moved through that building like she had memorized every room, every corridor, every possible firing position. Her tactical awareness was beyond anything I've seen from special operations personnel. The major continued questioning Sarah for another hour, but her answers only deepened the mystery. She had no explanation for abilities that clearly exceeded her training and experience. The official report would document exceptional performance under combat conditions, but it couldn't explain how that performance was possible. 2 weeks later, Sarah received orders to report to a different facility for specialized evaluation. The orders were vague about the purpose, but she suspected her combat performance had attracted attention from higher levels of command. She packed her gear and prepared for transfer, uncertain about what awaited her at the new assignment. The facility turned out to be a joint training center where elite military units conducted advanced operations training. Sarah reported to Colonel Harrison, a distinguished officer with special operations background who reviewed her file with obvious interest. His office was decorated with commendations from various classified missions, suggesting extensive experience with unconventional warfare. Nurse Martinez, your recent combat performance has raised some interesting questions, Colonel Harrison began. We'd like to conduct some additional evaluations to better understand your capabilities. What kind of evaluations, sir? Combat skills assessment, tactical reasoning, language aptitude, and some psychological testing. Nothing harmful or career-threatening. We're simply trying to understand what happened during that engagement. Sarah agreed to the testing, hoping it might provide answers to her own questions. The evaluation process began the next morning with physical fitness and combat skills assessment. She was tested on marksmanship, tactical movement, hand-to-hand combat, and various technical skills related to military operations. The results were remarkable. Despite having minimal formal training, Sarah demonstrated proficiency levels that exceeded many veteran soldiers. Her marksmanship scores were expert level across multiple weapon systems. Her tactical movement showed sophisticated understanding of cover, concealment, and battlefield positioning. Most surprisingly, she displayed advanced knowledge of special operations techniques she had never been taught. The language testing revealed even more unusual results. Sarah demonstrated fluency in Arabic, Farsi, and Pashto, languages she insisted she had never studied. When presented with technical military terminology in these languages, she translated accurately and immediately. Her knowledge extended beyond basic vocabulary to include regional dialects and cultural contexts that typically took years of study to acquire. Dr. Elizabeth Chun, the psychological evaluator, conducted extensive interviews and testing to understand Sarah's mental state and cognitive abilities. The doctor had worked with special operations personnel for over a decade and was familiar with exceptional performance under stress, but Sarah's case was unprecedented. Your test results indicate advanced tactical reasoning and decision-making capabilities that typically develop through years of combat experience, Dr. Chen explained. Yet your military record shows no previous combat exposure. Can you help me understand how you acquired these skills? Sarah had been asking herself the same question for weeks without finding answers. Doctor, I wish I could explain it. During that firefight, I knew things I had never learned and could do things I had never practiced. It felt completely natural, like I was accessing abilities that had always been there. Have you experienced anything similar before? Perhaps in stressful situations or emergencies? Sarah thought carefully before answering. There was one incident during my medical training. A training scenario went wrong and a student was critically injured. I performed emergency procedures that I hadn't been taught yet, saving his life. At the time, everyone assumed I had studied ahead or had previous experience. But I knew I hadn't. Dr. Chun made extensive notes while Sarah described several other incidents where she had demonstrated knowledge or abilities beyond her training. The pattern suggested that high-stress situations triggered access to capabilities that remained dormant under normal circumstances. "There's something else," Sarah added hesitantly. "Sometimes I have dreams that feel like memories of events I never experienced. Combat operations, tactical planning, advanced medical procedures. They're incredibly detailed and seem completely real." The psychological evaluation continued for several days, exploring every aspect of Sarah's background and mental capabilities. Dr. Chun conducted specialized testing designed to identify unusual cognitive patterns or hidden memories that might explain her extraordinary performance. The results were confusing and contradictory. Meanwhile, word of Sarah's abilities had reached the highest levels of military intelligence. Her case was discussed in classified briefings attended by senior officers from various special operations units. The consensus was that her capabilities needed to be evaluated by the most elite forces available, specifically Navy SEAL Team 6, the military's premier counterterrorism unit. Colonel Harrison called Sarah into his office after the first week of testing. "Nurse Martinez, we're arranging for you to participate in some specialized training exercises with one of our elite units. This is an opportunity to further evaluate your capabilities in realistic operational scenarios." "Which unit, sir?" "SEAL Team 6. They're conducting counterterrorism training exercises next month, and they've agreed to include you in their evaluation process." Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. SEAL Team 6 represented the absolute pinnacle of military special operations. Their standards were legendary, and their acceptance of new personnel was extremely rare. The fact that they were willing to evaluate her suggested that her abilities had attracted very serious attention. "Sir, I'm honored by the opportunity, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to train with SEALs." "That's exactly what we're trying to determine," Colonel Harrison replied. "Your recent performance suggests capabilities that go far beyond normal military training. We need to understand the full extent of what you can do." The training exercise was scheduled for 3 weeks later at a classified facility designed to replicate various combat scenarios. Sarah would be integrated into a SEAL team for evaluation during simulated counterterrorism operations. The scenarios would test every aspect of special operations capabilities, from tactical planning to direct action missions. During the weeks leading up to the exercise, Sarah continued her evaluation process while receiving briefings on SEAL operations and procedures. She studied team tactics, communication protocols, and specialized equipment use. The material was complex and demanding, typically requiring months of intensive training to master. Yet Sarah absorbed the information with unusual ease, demonstrating comprehension and retention that impressed her instructors. She seemed to intuitively understand concepts that challenged experienced military personnel. Her questions revealed sophisticated tactical thinking that went beyond the material she was studying. Dr. Chun continued her psychological evaluation, trying to understand the source of Sarah's extraordinary capabilities. The testing revealed cognitive patterns that didn't match any known psychological profiles. Sarah's brain seemed to access information and skills through mechanisms that medical science couldn't explain. "Your case is unique in my experience," Dr. Chin told Sarah during their final session. "You demonstrate abilities that appear to come from nowhere, yet they're consistently reliable and highly advanced. Whatever is happening in your mind, it represents something outside normal human capability." As the date for the SEAL evaluation approached, Sarah felt a growing sense of anticipation mixed with uncertainty. She had no idea how she would perform under the scrutiny of the military's most elite warriors, but she was determined to do her best. The answers she sought about her own identity and capabilities might finally emerge during the crucible of special operations training. The night before departing for the SEAL facility, Sarah packed her gear with careful attention to detail. She included her medical equipment alongside the tactical gear she had been issued for the exercise. Somehow, she knew she would need both sets of skills during the challenges ahead. The quiet nurse from Texas was about to face the ultimate test of abilities she still didn't fully understand. The SEAL training facility was located on a remote island off the coast of California, accessible only by military transport. As Sarah's helicopter approached the landing zone, she could see elaborate training structures designed to replicate urban environments, maritime operations, and high-altitude scenarios. The facility represented the cutting edge of special operations training, where America's most elite warriors honed their skills. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Stone waited at the landing zone as Sarah disembarked from the helicopter. Stone was a 20-year veteran of SEAL operations with multiple combat deployments and a reputation for being impossibly demanding. He stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, with a weathered appearance of someone who had spent decades pushing human capability to its absolute limits. "You must be Martinez," Stone said, extending his hand. "I'll be honest, most of us are skeptical about this evaluation. We've heard the reports, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence." Sarah shook his hand, meeting his direct gaze. "I understand, Chief. I'm skeptical myself. I'm hoping these exercises will help me understand what really happened during that firefight." Stone studied her carefully, noting the calm confidence that seemed unusual for someone facing evaluation by SEAL Team 6. Most personnel, even experienced special operations soldiers, showed signs of nervousness when first arriving at the facility. Sarah appeared completely composed, as if she belonged in this environment. "Your training team consists of 8 operators with an average of 15 years special operations experience," Stone explained as they walked toward the briefing facility. "They've been told to treat you as a full team member, not a guest. The scenarios will be realistic and demanding. If you can't keep up, you'll be removed from the exercise immediately." The briefing room contained detailed maps, satellite imagery, and operational planning materials for their first scenario. Sarah was introduced to her temporary teammates, 7 SEAL operators whose names and backgrounds were largely classified. They greeted her politely, but remained obviously skeptical about her presence among their ranks. Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell, the team leader, outlined their first mission. They would conduct a simulated hostage rescue operation in an urban environment designed to replicate Middle Eastern architecture. The scenario included multiple buildings, civilian populations, and sophisticated opposition forces played by other military personnel. "Intelligence indicates 12 hostages being held in a 3-story compound," Mitchell explained. "Opposition strength is estimated at 25 fighters with military training and advanced weaponry. Time constraint is 30 minutes from insertion to extraction. Mission failure results in hostage casualties." Sarah studied the operational materials with growing familiarity. The tactical situation was complex, requiring careful coordination between team members and precise timing to succeed. She found herself visualizing potential approaches and identifying weaknesses in the target facility that weren't immediately obvious from the intelligence briefings. "Question about the compound's electrical systems," Sarah said, pointing to the architectural diagrams. "These plans show the main power junction is located here, but the backup generator placement suggests the actual control systems are in the basement level." The team members looked at her with surprise. The electrical systems weren't part of the standard briefing materials, and her observation was based on subtle details that most personnel would miss. Mitchell checked his classified intelligence files and confirmed that Sarah's assessment was correct. "How did you identify that?" asked Petty Officer Rodriguez, one of the team's explosive specialists. "I'm not sure," Sarah replied honestly. The patterns in the diagrams seemed to indicate a different layout than what was described in the briefing. The team spent 2 hours developing their operational plan, with Sarah contributing insights that impressed the experienced operators. Her tactical suggestions were sophisticated and demonstrated understanding of special operations procedures that exceeded her supposed training level. She identified security vulnerabilities and proposed solutions that the SEALs themselves had overlooked. The mission launched at dawn the following morning. Sarah was equipped with the same advanced weaponry and communication equipment used by the SEAL team, despite having minimal training on most of the systems. She adapted to the gear immediately, handling sophisticated equipment with the familiarity of someone who had used it for years. The insertion phase involved fast roping from helicopters into a hostile environment while under simulated enemy fire. Sarah's performance was flawless, demonstrating rope techniques and aircraft procedures that should have required extensive training. She landed precisely on target and immediately moved to her assigned position without hesitation or confusion. The team advanced through the urban environment using stealth and tactical movement to avoid detection. Sarah's performance during this phase astonished her teammates. She moved with perfect noise discipline, maintained proper spacing, and anticipated threats with accuracy that seemed supernatural. Her situational awareness exceeded that of operators with decades of experience. She's reading the environment like she's been doing this her entire life, Rodriguez whispered to Mitchell during a brief pause. I've never seen a rookie move like that. The compound assault phase revealed the full extent of Sarah's unusual capabilities. The team executed a coordinated breach of the target building, with each member responsible for specific sectors and objectives. Sarah was assigned to the medical team role, providing emergency care for any wounded hostages while supporting tactical operations as needed. However, when the mission encountered unexpected complications, Sarah's role expanded dramatically. The opposition force had changed their defensive positions, creating a tactical situation that threatened mission failure. The hostages were moved to a different location, and additional enemy fighters appeared in positions that weren't identified in the intelligence briefing. Sarah was the first to recognize the changed tactical situation. The hostages aren't in the planned location, she reported over the team radio. They've been moved to the second floor, eastern room. 3 guards instead of 2, and they got heavy weapons positioned at the stairwell. Mitchell immediately questioned her assessment. Martinez, you don't have visual on that location. How can you possibly know that? I can hear the conversations, Sarah replied. They're discussing security procedures and hostage management. Also, there's a sniper team on the building across the street that wasn't in our intelligence report. The information proved completely accurate when other team members verified her assessments through direct observation. Sarah had somehow obtained tactical intelligence that was impossible for her to access through normal means. Her awareness of the operational environment exceeded anything the SEALs had experienced from other personnel. The mission continued with Sarah providing constant tactical updates that allowed the team to adapt their approach in real time. She identified enemy positions, predicted their movements, and even provided technical information about their weapons and equipment. Her intelligence was consistently accurate and immediately actionable. When the team encountered heavy resistance during the hostage extraction phase, Sarah's combat capabilities became apparent. She engaged enemy targets with precision marksmanship while maintaining perfect tactical movement and communication discipline. Her performance under fire was indistinguishable from veteran special operations personnel. Tango down, second floor window, Sarah reported after eliminating an enemy sniper who had been targeting other team members. Moving to support hostage evacuation, she transitioned seamlessly between combat and medical roles, providing emergency care to wounded hostages while maintaining security and tactical awareness. Her medical skills were exceptional, but her ability to perform complex procedures under combat conditions was unprecedented. She saved 2 hostages who would have died without immediate advanced medical intervention. The mission concluded successfully within the time constraint, with all hostages rescued and no friendly casualties. However, the SEAL team was more focused on Sarah's performance than their operational success. She had demonstrated capabilities that challenged their understanding of human potential and military training. Chief Stone conducted the immediate after-action review with obvious amazement. Martinez, I've been training special operations personnel for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like what you just demonstrated. Your tactical awareness, combat skills, and adaptability exceed our most experienced operators. Sarah felt the familiar confusion that followed these intense situations. The abilities had been completely natural during the mission, but now seemed foreign and inexplicable. "Chief, I wish I could explain it. During the operation, everything felt normal and logical, but I can't tell you how I knew things or where those skills came from." Lieutenant Commander Mitchell shook his head in bewilderment. "Martinez, you just executed a perfect special operations mission with zero prior training. You identified intelligence that our surveillance couldn't detect, engaged targets with expert marksmanship, and saved lives with advanced medical procedures. Those capabilities require years of intensive training and combat experience." The debriefing continued for hours as the SEAL team tried to understand what they had witnessed. Sarah answered every question honestly, but her explanations only deepened the mystery. She had no memory of learning the skills she had demonstrated, no training that could account for her performance, and no understanding of how she accessed information that should have been unavailable to her. Word of the exercise results reached the highest levels of military command within hours. Senior officers who had been skeptical about the reports from Sarah's previous combat engagement now had confirmation from the most elite unit in the American military. Her capabilities were real, unprecedented, and completely unexplained. Chief Stone filed his evaluation report with recommendations that would change Sarah's military career forever. She had earned the respect and amazement of warriors who had seen everything the battlefield could offer. But, more importantly, she had proven that her extraordinary abilities were consistent and reliable under the most demanding conditions imaginable. As the team prepared for their next training scenario, Sarah realized that her life would never return to the quiet predictability she had once known. The nurse from Texas had become something else entirely, though she still didn't understand what that something was. The only certainty was that her journey into the world of elite military operations was just beginning. The final exercise took place 3 days later and would prove to be the most challenging scenario the SEAL team had ever attempted. Sarah had spent the intervening time working with the team on advanced tactical procedures, but her performance during training sessions only added to the mystery surrounding her abilities. She demonstrated mastery of techniques that typically required years to develop, often performing better than instructors with decades of experience. Dr. Patricia Vance arrived at the facility on the morning of the final exercise. Dr. Vance was a neurologist and researcher who specialized in studying exceptional human performance and cognitive abilities. She had been called in to observe Sarah's performance and attempt to understand the neurological basis for her extraordinary capabilities. "I've reviewed your test results and mission reports," Dr. Vance told Sarah during their brief meeting. "Your case represents something unprecedented in the literature on human cognitive ability. I'd like to monitor your brain activity during today's exercise using portable scanning equipment." Sarah agreed to wear the monitoring devices, though she doubted they would reveal anything useful. The equipment was designed to measure brain wave patterns, neural activity levels, and cognitive processing during high-stress situations. Dr. Vance hoped to identify unusual patterns that might explain Sarah's abilities. The final scenario was classified as extreme difficulty and had never been successfully completed by a single team. It required infiltrating a heavily defended compound, rescuing multiple hostages from different locations, neutralizing advanced security systems, and extracting under combat conditions while carrying wounded personnel. The opposition force consisted of 30 highly trained operators using military-grade equipment and tactics. "This scenario has a 90% failure rate," Chief Stone explained during the briefing. "We use it to identify areas where our most experienced teams need additional training. Success requires perfect execution, flawless teamwork, and capabilities that push human performance to absolute limits." Sarah studied the mission parameters with growing certainty that she could lead the team to success. The feeling was different from her previous experiences. Instead of mysterious knowledge appearing when needed, she felt a comprehensive understanding of the entire operational environment. Every aspect of the mission seemed clear and manageable, despite its obvious complexity. "I'd like to suggest some modifications to our approach," Sarah said during the planning session. "The intelligence indicates 17 guards, but there are actually 23. Their patrol patterns change every 12 minutes, not 15 as reported. And there's a secondary alarm system that isn't mentioned in our briefing materials." Lieutenant Commander Mitchell had learned to trust Sarah's assessments, but her latest claims seemed impossible to verify. "Martinez, the intelligence for this scenario comes from months of surveillance and reconnaissance. How could you know details that aren't in the official reports?" "I can visualize the entire compound," Sarah replied. "Not just the layout we've been shown, but the actual current configuration. Guard positions, security measures, even conversations between the opposition force members. The information is all there. I just need to access it." The team proceeded with the mission using Sarah's enhanced intelligence, though several members remained skeptical about information that seemed to come from nowhere. However, their previous experience with her capabilities had taught them that her assessments were consistently accurate, regardless of how impossible they seemed. The insertion phase involved underwater approach, followed by climbing a 3-story wall under darkness. Sarah performed the infiltration flawlessly, moving through water and scaling vertical surfaces with abilities that exceeded Olympic-level athletes. Her movements were silent and efficient, demonstrating advanced techniques that weren't part of standard military training. Dr. Vance monitored Sarah's brain activity throughout the mission, watching patterns that defied conventional understanding of human neurology. During moments of peak performance, Sarah's brain showed activity levels that should have been impossible to sustain. More puzzling, some regions displayed patterns that resembled accessing stored information, as if she were retrieving memories that shouldn't exist. Inside the compound, Sarah's tactical awareness reached levels that amazed even the veteran SEALs. She moved through the facility with perfect knowledge of every room, corridor, and obstacle. Her route planning was optimal, avoiding security measures and guard positions with precision that suggested intimate familiarity with the environment. "There are 2 hostages in the basement level, 4 on the 2nd floor, and 3 in the penthouse," Sarah reported over the team radio. "The basement hostages are wounded and will require immediate medical attention. 2nd-floor subjects are mobile, but sedated. Penthouse group includes a high-value target who must be extracted alive." The team split into 3 elements to simultaneously rescue all hostage groups, with Sarah coordinating the operation while providing medical support where needed. Her tactical coordination was masterful, managing complex multi-team operations with the skill of a seasoned special operations commander. The basement element encountered heavy resistance when opposition forces detected their presence. Sarah immediately recognized the tactical situation from audio cues and radio intercepts, vectoring support elements to assist the threatened team members. Her battlefield management prevented what could have been catastrophic mission failure. "Alpha Team, you have 4 tangos moving to flank your position from the eastern corridor," Sarah radioed. "Suggest immediate displacement to secondary route. Bravo Team can provide overwatch from stairwell position." Her tactical recommendations were precisely accurate, allowing the team to maintain operational momentum despite enemy countermeasures. Sarah seemed to anticipate opposition responses before they occurred, providing friendly forces with decisive advantages throughout the engagement. When the penthouse assault team encountered sophisticated security systems that weren't described in their briefing materials, Sarah provided technical guidance that enabled rapid bypass of electronic defenses. Her knowledge of security technology was comprehensive and current, covering systems that required specialized training to understand. "The door mechanism has a secondary sensor package," Sarah explained over radio while treating wounded hostages in the basement. "You need to defeat both the primary keypad and the biometric scanner simultaneously. The bypass sequence is available through the maintenance panel located 2 feet left of the main door." The information proved completely accurate, allowing the penthouse team to breach the security barrier within minutes instead of the hours typically required for such sophisticated systems. Sarah's technical knowledge seemed to cover every aspect of modern security technology, despite having no documented training in those areas. The extraction phase required carrying multiple wounded hostages while fighting through reinforced opposition positions. Sarah transitioned between medical care, tactical coordination, and direct combat support without losing effectiveness in any role. Her performance under extreme stress exceeded anything the SEAL team had previously witnessed. Dr. Vance watched Sarah's neurological patterns reach unprecedented levels during the most intense combat phases. Her brain was processing information at rates that challenged scientific understanding of human cognitive capacity. More significantly, the pattern suggested she was accessing information through mechanisms that didn't correspond to normal memory or sensory input. "Martinez, we've got a problem," Chief Stone radioed during the final extraction phase. "Opposition reinforcements are arriving faster than anticipated. We're looking at overwhelming odds if we try to reach the extraction point." Sarah paused in her medical treatment of a wounded hostage, her awareness expanding to encompass the entire tactical situation. She could visualize enemy positions, friendly locations, available routes, and optimal timing for movement. The complete operational picture was clear and detailed, allowing her to develop perfect solutions. "Chief, there's an alternative extraction route through the compound's maintenance tunnels," Sarah replied. "The tunnel system connects to a drainage outlet 800 meters north of our planned extraction point. Enemy forces haven't identified that location, and it provides concealed movement for the entire team." The route Sarah described wasn't shown on any available maps or intelligence reports, yet it proved to exist exactly as she had outlined. The team used the tunnel system to successfully extract all hostages while avoiding enemy forces that were concentrated around the primary extraction point. Her tactical innovation saved the mission and prevented potential casualties. The exercise concluded with complete success, all objectives achieved, all hostages rescued, and no friendly casualties. More importantly, Sarah had demonstrated tactical leadership and special operations capabilities that exceeded the performance of personnel with decades of experience. The SEAL team had witnessed human potential that challenged their understanding of what was possible. Chief Stone's final evaluation was unprecedented in his 20-year career. "Martinez has demonstrated special operations capabilities that exceed our most experienced personnel. Her tactical awareness, combat skills, technical knowledge, and leadership abilities represent the highest level of human performance I have ever witnessed. She has earned the complete respect and confidence of SEAL Team 6. Dr. Vance's neurological analysis provided partial answers, but raised even more questions. Sarah's brain shows activity patterns that suggest access to information storage and processing mechanisms beyond current scientific understanding. During peak performance phases, her cognitive capacity appears to exceed normal human limitations by several orders of magnitude. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell submitted his report recommending Sarah for immediate integration into Special Operations Forces, with assignment to the most demanding missions available. His assessment was unequivocal. Martinez represents a quantum leap in human special operations capability. Her abilities are consistent, reliable, and superior to anything we have previously encountered. As Sarah prepared to leave the training facility, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a quiet medical career to recognition as potentially the most capable special operations personnel in military history. The abilities remained mysterious, but their reality was now undeniable. She had found her true calling in the most demanding and dangerous missions her country could offer. The nurse from Texas had become something unprecedented, a warrior whose capabilities challenged the limits of human potential. The military's most elite forces had not only accepted her abilities, but actively sought her integration into their ranks. Sarah Martinez had proven herself worthy of fighting alongside the warriors she once thought existed only in legends. Her transformation was complete, though the mystery of how it occurred remained unsolved. She had access to knowledge and skills that defied explanation, but she also had the acceptance and respect of personnel whose opinions meant everything in the special operations community. Whatever she had become, she was ready to use these gifts in service of missions that only she could accomplish.